My name is Bonnie Hurst, and I'm 31 years old. If you asked anyone in my family who I am, they'd probably say the responsible one, the one who doesn't cause trouble, doesn't make scenes, and definitely doesn't need attention. But that night, at my father's 60th birthday dinner, all I could think about was how much attention he demanded, even when it came at my expense. I'd spent 2 years saving for that truck. Every overtime hour, every skipped lunch, every night I worked late in my small apartment surrounded by spreadsheets and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. My father, Martin Hurst, had been obsessing over that model for months. A fully loaded Ram 1500, silver with leather interior. He'd show me pictures, not because he wanted my opinion, but because he liked to talk about what he deserved. I thought maybe for once I could give him something that would make him proud. The restaurant was loud that night. Clinking glasses, laughter, candles reflecting off crystal. My stepmother, Lacey, had chosen a long oak table near the window, overlooking downtown. My younger sister, Erin, the family's golden child, was already snapping photos before I even arrived. "Dad's turning 60, she said, laughing into her phone camera. "Still the king of this castle." I smiled politely, holding the car keys in my pocket so tightly my palm went numb. When I led him outside after dinner, everyone followed. The truck sat under a soft glow of streetlights, a big red bow tied across the hood. I said quietly, "Happy birthday, Dad." For a second, there was silence. Then, a whistle from one of his friends. "Wow, she really went all out," someone muttered. Martin's eyes widened. For a heartbeat, I saw something like pride flicker across his face. Then, the corner of his mouth twitched. I should have recognized that look, the one that always came before the punchline. Back inside, with champagne poured and everyone watching, he raised his glass. "To my daughter Bonnie," he said, voice full of mock gravity. "Always trying to buy affection. Guess she thinks love comes with leather seats." Laughter. Real unfiltered laughter. Someone coughed to cover it, but it was too late. The words had landed. Erin giggled like it was a sitcom. Lacey smirked behind her flute. Even Doug, Dad's golf buddy, the one who once told me I reminded him of his niece, the smart one, looked away. I smiled. I don't know how I did, but I smiled. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it over the laughter. My voice felt trapped somewhere behind my teeth. So I did what I always do. I acted like it didn't matter. I stood, adjusted my jacket, and said softly, "Excuse me." The clinking, the chatter, the laughter, it all blurred as I walked out. Outside, the air was cool and sharp. I leaned against my car, staring at the bow still sitting on that truck. It looked ridiculous now, like a costume I'd forced love to wear. I could still hear echoes from inside, Erin's bright laugh, my father's booming voice. I thought I'd cry. I didn't. Instead, I felt nothing, like a switch had flipped. A quiet, cold calm replaced the hurt. When I got home, I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my dress, staring at my phone. 14 missed calls in 2 hours. I didn't pick up any of them. In the dim light, I whispered to myself, I should have known better. But part of me refused to give in. The analytical part, the one that lives on spreadsheets and fine print, remembered something important. The dealership had registered the truck to me, but I hadn't transferred the title yet. Legally, it was still mine. That thought sat in my chest like an ember. I wasn't ready to feel the full fire yet, but it was there, waiting. When I finally lay down, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, thinking about all the birthdays, the dinners, the little jokes that weren't jokes. The salad orders he placed for me without asking. The big girl comments. The way he once told me at 17 that no man would love me unless I got under 150 pounds. Every word came back now, sharpened by humiliation. By morning, I knew exactly what I was going to do. As dawn light filtered through my blinds, I put on jeans, grabbed my spare truck key, and drove. The streets were empty, the world still half asleep. When I turned onto his street, sprinklers sprayed arcs of mist across manicured lawns. The truck sat there in the driveway, gleaming, red bow drooping from dew. My pulse stayed steady. No music, no noise, just the sound of the key turning, the engine purring to life. I backed out slowly, the garage light flicking on behind me. For the first time in my life, I was taking something back. When I parked the truck back in my driveway, the morning sky was still tinted gray. The air smelled faintly of wet pavement and gasoline. I sat there for a long moment, engine idling, hands gripping the wheel. I should have felt guilt, but what I felt was balance. Like the world had finally tilted in my favor, if only by an inch. I called the dealership manager. "Mr. Kavanaugh, this is Bonnie Hurst, the Ram 1500 from Friday." He remembered immediately, probably because not many people buy a truck, gift wrap it, and return it 2 days later. I told him, flat and steady, "I need to reverse the sale. Title hasn't been transferred. It's clean. No miles." He hesitated only a second before saying, "Bring it in before noon, Ms. Hurst. We'll take care of it." The drive there felt like the quietest rebellion of my life. No one chasing me, no sirens, just the soft hum of the engine and a strange lightness in my chest. When I handed over the keys, the manager looked at me like he wanted to ask what happened, but didn't. I was grateful for that. By the time I got home, my phone was vibrating nonstop on the counter, 28 missed calls, a few voicemails, dozens of messages. I didn't listen, not yet. But I saw the names, Dad, Aaron, Lacey. Aaron's text came first. "Why would you do that? Are you seriously that petty? He's freaking out, like actually losing it. Call me." Then Lacey. "You heard him. It was just a joke. Don't make it worse." And then Dad's voicemail. I pressed play halfway through. His voice was a low, furious rumble. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone over a misunderstanding. You made me look like an ungrateful fool." A bitter laugh escaped my throat. "Made you look like one?" I thought. "You didn't need my help for that." I turned off my phone. I needed silence. The gym had become my one neutral ground. No family, no small talk, no history. As I ran on the treadmill, my reflection flickered in the mirror wall. Tired eyes, clenched jaw. A woman who'd been performing respect for people who never earned it. My therapist once told me, "You don't always change to prove something to others, Bonnie. Sometimes you change so you don't hate the person staring back at you." That sentence used to feel too neat, too self-help perfect. But now, it landed like truth. I stayed another hour just to let the noise inside me quiet down. When I got home again, there were even more missed calls, 37 this time. Another voicemail from Dad. "If you're going to be this sensitive, maybe don't come around anymore." I froze. That was his pattern. Wound me, then call me dramatic when I bled. I deleted the voicemail and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my reflection in the window. My apartment was small but tidy, everything in its place. Proof that I'd built a life of control because he never gave me peace. It hit me, suddenly and sharply, that this wasn't about a truck. It wasn't even about the toast. It was about every comment he'd ever turned into a joke. Every time I'd been told I was too much or not enough, too serious, too emotional, too plain, too big. When I was 12, he called me his big girl. I told him I hated that name. He laughed, said, "It's a compliment, Bon. You're sturdy, like your old man." When I was 17, I showed him my prom dress. Emerald green, sleeveless, simple. He stared at me, frowning. "Are you sure that's flattering?" he asked. That night, I told my date I was sick and stayed home. Those moments lived in me like splinters. I thought I'd buried them, but humiliation has a way of resurrecting old pain. That afternoon, I opened Instagram. I shouldn't have, but curiosity is its own kind of self-harm. Erin had posted a photo of Dad standing beside the empty driveway, coffee mug in hand, face twisted in disbelief. Her caption read, "Still waiting for my truck." Comments poured in. "Classic Bonnie move. Hope she kept the receipt." I stared at the screen until my hands trembled. Then I took a screenshot, blocked her, and closed the app. That was the moment the ember in my chest caught flame. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just decided. No more explanations. No more trying to make cruelty sound like humor. No more playing along. That night, I called my therapist. I told her everything. The dinner, the toast, the return, the voicemail, the Instagram post. When she asked, "What do you want to do now?" I said, "Disappear, at least from them." She paused for a moment, then said gently, "Then do it, Bonnie, but disappear into peace, not silence." Her words echoed through my mind long after I hung up. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from a problem. I was walking toward freedom, and I had no intention of looking back. I didn't open my phone for 3 days. The world felt quieter without the constant buzzing of guilt. No family messages, no explanations, no fake apologies, just quiet, the kind that's both terrifying and liberating. On the 4th day, I drafted an email. Not to my father. I already knew how that would go. He'd twist my words, laugh, and forward it to Aaron for entertainment. No, I wrote to Lacey, my stepmother, the one who usually stayed neutral but never cruel. Hi, Lacey. I appreciate that you've always been polite to me, but I need to step away. I can't keep pretending that our family's jokes don't cut me to pieces. I won't come to birthdays, holidays, or dinners. I won't play the part of the overly sensitive daughter anymore. I'm done giving gifts, favors, or financial help. I need space, not to make a point, but to protect what's left of me. Bonnie. I hovered over send for a long time. Then I clicked it, heart thudding. Her reply came that same night. I understand, and I'm sorry. That was it. 7 words. But it was more compassion than I'd ever heard from my father in 31 years. The next morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number. It was Mom. We hadn't spoken properly in months, but Lacey must have told her what happened. Good. I was wondering when you'd finally cut him off. I reread it 3 times. It felt unreal. I'd expected guilt, maybe pity. He's still your father, or don't burn bridges. But instead, she sounded relieved. When I called her later, her voice was calm but heavy with something deeper. I've watched from a distance, Bonnie. I knew if I said anything before, you'd defend him. She wasn't wrong. I used to jump to his defense every time someone hinted at his temper. She continued, he's always needed someone to measure himself against. When I left, you became that mirror. Her words landed like a slow burn in my chest. Why didn't you fight for custody? I asked. The question had haunted me for years. She sighed. Because he threatened to ruin me in court, and because I thought you'd be safer if I didn't fight. I didn't know what to say. For so long, I'd told myself she'd abandoned me. Now, it sounded like she'd been protecting me in the only way she could. I thought you left because you didn't care, I whispered. I left because I cared too much, she said, and I knew he'd destroy anyone who stood too close. That night, I sat by my window with a mug of tea gone cold, watching headlights pass below. For the first time, I saw my life as a series of small escapes, moving out, working overtime, living alone, all disguised as independence, but really just me running from his orbit. The next day, the silence shattered again. Aaron called, twice, then sent a wall of texts. Dad's heartbroken. He said you humiliated him. You've always been dramatic, Bonnie. He's sick over this. He told everyone you're unstable, that you need help. I stared at those words for a long time. Unstable. The label he always used when he couldn't control me. That afternoon, my old coworker Kelly texted me out of nowhere. Hey, just so you know, your dad messaged me on Facebook. Said you're having a breakdown? I felt the room spin. He was spreading rumors now, tainting every space he couldn't own. I called my lawyer, Dana Morales, a woman who'd handled my lease dispute last year. I told her everything. She listened quietly, then said, He's not trying to make peace, Bonnie. He's trying to build a narrative before you can. Her words sent chills down my spine. By the end of that call, she'd already drafted a cease and desist letter. When I signed it, I felt like I'd finally drawn a line in the sand, not with rage, but with resolve. 2 days later, Aaron texted again. He's furious. Says you humiliated him in front of his friends. You should apologize. I didn't reply. But that evening, a notification lit up my phone, a Facebook post, a photo of my father in a hospital gown, arm hooked to an IV. Caption, Sometimes your heart breaks more than your children will ever understand. The comments were endless. Stay strong, Martin. You don't deserve this. Praying for your daughter to find her way. My stomach turned. He'd turned his own cruelty into a sympathy parade. I shut my laptop, shaking. My therapist's voice floated through my mind. You can't win a game you didn't agree to play. That night, I opened a new browser tab and searched apartments for rent in Arizona. It was where my mom lived, small town, warm weather. No one knew me there. For the first time, the idea of distance didn't feel like running away. It felt like freedom. By morning, I'd made my decision. I would rent out my apartment, sell my car, and disappear from his story completely. This time, not out of fear, but because I was done being the punchline. The moving truck arrived at dawn. My apartment, once a symbol of control, looked like a hollowed-out shell. Stacks of boxes lined the walls, labeled kitchen, work, things that are only mine. Each one felt like a small piece of my life reclaimed. Mom had already set up a guest room for me in Arizona. When I texted her my ETA, she replied, Drive safe. The sun's brutal this week, but it's a good kind of heat. It burns what needs to go. I smiled at that. For once, someone in my family spoke in warmth instead of weapons. Before leaving, I stopped by the dealership to sign the final reversal papers. The manager gave me a cautious look. "Everything okay now, Ms. Hurst?" "Better than it's been in years," I said, and meant it. The road to Arizona stretched long and silent. The further I got from my father's city, the lighter I felt, like each mile peeled off a layer of noise I'd carried for decades. Still, I wasn't naive enough to think he'd let me go easily. By the time I reached my mom's small adobe house in Sedona, the sunset had turned the desert gold. She came out onto the porch, hair tied up, wearing paint-stained jeans. I hadn't seen her smile like that since I was 10. She hugged me tightly, then looked at my face. "You look tired." "I am," I said, "but it's the good kind." That night, over tea, I asked the question that had sat in my throat since childhood. "Why did you stay so long with him?" Mom looked into her mug for a moment. "Because I thought I could fix him, and because I didn't want you and Aaron to think brokenness meant abandonment." "Did you ever love him?" I asked quietly. She nodded once. "But loving him was like trying to hug smoke. You always end up choking." Silence hung between us. Outside, cicadas hummed in the warm air. Then she said something that reshaped everything I thought I knew about my past. When we divorced, he told the court I was unstable, that I drank. He even forged my therapist's notes. I could have fought it, but I didn't. Because I realized winning custody didn't mean protecting you. It meant keeping you close to his reach, and I couldn't let that happen. My breath caught. "So you let him take me?" "I let you stay," she corrected. "So you could see the truth yourself one day. And so when you finally walked away, you'd know it wasn't weakness. It was survival." I didn't speak for a long time. The ache in my chest wasn't just grief. It was recognition. All my life, I'd thought she'd abandoned me, but she'd simply refused to play his game. Later, I sat in the guest room surrounded by unpacked boxes. My phone was face down on the dresser, vibrating with unread messages. Aaron again. "Dad says he wants to make things right. Just call him." "He's saying you're ungrateful. He gave you everything." "He's saying you're sick." Each text was like a fishing line, cast to reel me back into the same old storm. I turned the phone off and pushed it under a pillow. In the morning, I helped Mom repaint her living room. She taught ethics at the local college now. Ironic, considering who she once married. Between brushstrokes, she said, "You know, he always hated that I taught ethics. Said it made him look bad." I snorted. "He didn't need any help with that." She smiled. "You have my sarcasm. Dangerous weapon." We painted in silence for a while. Then she added, "Don't expect closure from him. You'll never get it. Closure isn't something he gives. It's something you build yourself." That night, I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through old photos on my phone, family dinners, fake smiles, birthdays, where I looked half there. Every memory looked staged now, like someone else's movie. Around 2 a.m., I opened a new note and started typing. "Closure is not an apology. Closure is the sound of your own footsteps walking away." It wasn't poetry, it was truth. And for the first time, I believed it. 3 days later, an envelope arrived. No return address, just my name written in my father's unmistakable handwriting. Inside was a letter. "Bonnie, you've made your point. Let's sit down and talk this through like adults. This childish behavior has gone on long enough. Dad." No apology, no reflection, just authority, like always. I folded the letter carefully, slid it into a folder labeled receipts, and locked it in my desk. He still didn't understand. I wasn't rebelling. I was recovering. A week later, Mom found me sitting outside, barefoot in the red dust, staring at the horizon. She said softly, "You're not your father's echo anymore." And for the first time in my life, I believed her. Peace didn't last long. It never does when you're dealing with someone who feeds on control. About 2 weeks after settling in with Mom, I got a call from Dana, my lawyer. "Bonnie, you should sit down for this," she said. My father had been contacting my old coworkers again, emailing them, telling them I'd been emotionally unstable and financially reckless. He even attached an old photo of me from 5 years ago at a friend's party, holding a drink. The caption he'd written made my stomach twist. "Before the spiral." Dana sighed. "He's trying to discredit you before you can share your version of things. It's a classic control tactic." I wanted to scream, but instead I laughed. That dry, tired kind of laugh that comes out when you're too exhausted to cry. "How do people like him sleep at night?" "Easily," she said, "because they think they're the victims." By evening, the cease and desist letter was out. I signed it with a steady hand and an unshakable promise to myself. This time, I would not fold. The next morning, Aaron texted again. A new number, since I'd blocked the last one. Dad's furious. He says you embarrassed him in front of his friends. He's been sick for days. Then another. You should apologize. He's in the hospital now. You really pushed him too far. My heart skipped. Hospital? For a second, guilt tried to claw its way back in. But I stopped it. I didn't even know if it was true. Mom looked up from her coffee and saw my face pale. Let me guess, she said. He's suddenly deathly ill because you set a boundary? She was right, of course. A few hours later, I opened Facebook out of morbid curiosity. And there it was, a photo of my father lying in a hospital bed, hooked to an IV, dramatic lighting and all. His caption read, "Sometimes your heart breaks more than your children will ever understand." The post had hundreds of comments within hours. You're such a good man, Martin. Stay strong. Some kids never learn gratitude. Praying for healing. I felt my stomach twist. He wasn't trying to heal. He was performing pain for applause. That night, I went for a walk under the Arizona sky. The desert was quiet, wide, and honest. Everything he wasn't. I watched the stars and whispered to the darkness, he's not going to stop until he rewrites the story. When I got home, Mom was still up reading. She looked at me and said, "Then write your own." Simple words, but they stuck. The next morning, I opened my laptop and started documenting everything. Emails, texts, timestamps, screenshots, every humiliation, every manipulation. It wasn't revenge, it was protection. Later that week, Dana called again. He's threatening to file a defamation claim, she said, which won't hold, but it tells me he's scared. Scared of what? I asked. Of losing control over how people see him. That night I wrote him a message, short, cold, final. Please do not contact me again. Any further communication should go through my lawyer. His reply came 2 hours later. You'll regret this. Those 3 words used to paralyze me. This time I smiled. Not this time, Dad, I whispered. A few days later, Mom handed me a letter that had come in the mail. No envelope this time, just a folded piece of paper with a single line written in his sharp handwriting. You may hate me now, but blood always calls you back. I tore it in half, threw it in the sink, and turned on the faucet. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. The following week, I started working remotely for a new finance firm. Clean slate, different city, different nameplate on my laptop. My first paycheck arrived the same day I found out my father's business had filed for bankruptcy. Aaron texted me a screenshot of an article with the headline, Hearst & Co. faces legal troubles over mismanaged funds. Her message was just 3 words. Hope you're happy. I didn't respond, but I whispered, not happy, free. That night, I sat outside with Mom, the desert breeze warm against my skin. She poured me a glass of wine and said, Do you realize you're the only one in that family who's ever walked away on your own terms? I looked at her, smiling softly. Maybe that's what scares him most. And she nodded. Control only works on people who still want approval. You stopped wanting his. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because she was right. I had stopped wanting anything from him. Not his love, not his guilt, not even his apology. The next morning, I woke up early and started packing my things again. Not to run, but to move forward. I'd found a small house for rent just outside Sedona. 1 bedroom, a porch that faced the sunrise. As I carried the last box to the car, Mom hugged me tight. You sure you're ready? Yes, I said. I'm finally building a life that's mine. She smiled. Then this time, when you drive away, don't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't. The morning I moved into my own place in Sedona, the sky was the color of rose quartz. Soft, forgiving. My new house was small but full of light. There were no echoes of raised voices, no invisible tension pressing against the walls, just quiet. For the first few days, that silence felt heavy, like I didn't know what to do without the noise I'd grown used to. Then, slowly, it began to feel like peace. I built new routines, morning coffee on the porch, calls with Mom in the evenings, runs through the red canyons where even the rocks that seemed to breathe calm. I started sleeping through the night again, something I hadn't done in years. Weeks passed, and then one afternoon a package arrived. Plain brown box, no return address. I knew immediately who it was from. Inside was a framed photo, my father and me from years ago, when I was maybe 10. His hand on my shoulder, both of us smiling for the camera. Taped to the glass was a note in his sharp, unmistakable handwriting. "You'll always be my daughter, whether you like it or not." I stared at it for a long time. The photo was so old the edges had yellowed, but what struck me wasn't nostalgia. It was how staged the smile looked, mine wide and uncertain, his proud and performative. I slid the photo back into the box, sealed it shut, and locked it in a drawer. Then I went outside, sat on the porch, and breathed in the smell of rain-soaked dust. The desert sky was changing, streaks of orange melting into indigo. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel haunted, just steady. He could send letters, packages, guilt-wrapped as sentiment. But none of it could reach me anymore. A week later, Aaron texted again from an unknown number. "Dad's struggling. You should talk to him. He's not the same." I looked at the message for a full minute before deleting it. The truth was, I wasn't the same either. The version of me who craved approval, who laughed off insults, who mistook control for love, she was gone, and I wasn't bringing her back. Months passed like that. The kind of peaceful monotony that heals quietly, without ceremony. I got a small promotion at work, started going to yoga, made friends who didn't know me as Martin Hurst's daughter, but simply Bonnie. Then, one morning, while watering the succulents on my porch, I saw a familiar truck pull up across the street. Not that truck, but close enough. For a split second, my chest tightened. But it wasn't him, just a delivery driver. I laughed softly at myself. The fear had become muscle memory, but even that was fading. Later that evening, I found an email in my inbox. Subject line, "Just talk to him." It was from Aaron again. "He's asking for you. He says you've misunderstood everything. He said he just wanted what was best for you." I closed the laptop without replying, because I finally understood. He didn't want me. He wanted the version of me he could manage. Quiet, guilty, pliable. But that Bonnie was gone. Instead, I took a drive that night through the red hills, windows down, music low. The stars spilled across the horizon like salt, and I whispered into the wind, "I forgive you, but I don't owe you access." Forgiveness wasn't reconciliation. It was release. It meant letting go of the fantasy that someday he'd change, that someday we'd fix it. When I got home, I poured a glass of water, sat by the open window, and listened to the night insects hum. The phone buzzed once, his name flashing across the screen for the first time in months. I let it ring, then ring again. And when it stopped, I let the silence linger like a hymn. He'd spent his life trying to control the story to make me feel small enough to fit into his version of family. But here, in the stillness of my own home, surrounded by nothing but desert wind and possibility, I finally wrote my own ending. I didn't need revenge. I didn't even need closure, because I already had something stronger: peace. And peace, I realized, is the sound of not answering when the past calls.